The moon hung heavy and crimson above the ancient pine forests of the Sierra Nevada. Its blood-red light cast long, ominous shadows across the stone courtyard of Shadow Moon Fortress, where a woman knelt alone before the gathered pack. Alara Blackwood kept her head bowed, her silver-streaked hair falling like a veil over her face. The scent of burnt magic and silver clung to her skin, a reminder of her punishment for defying pack law. Around her, the nobles of the Shadow Moon pack stood in rigid silence, waiting for their king to pass judgment. Through the corners of her downcast eyes, Alara observed them. Warriors stood with their shoulders squared, their pride unbroken. Elders whose eyes carried the weight of centuries. Young wolves eager to witness punishment. And among them, a solitary figure stood apart from the rest. An elderly man whose weathered face betrayed no emotion, though his eyes never left her. Vance Holloway, the old advisor, the keeper of histories. A man whose relevance had faded with each passing year, until he was little more than a living relic. Yet something in his gaze made Alara's spine shiver. Recognition, perhaps, or something deeper. Boots echoed against stone, commanding everyone's attention. The crowd parted like water around a stone as their alpha approached. Kalen Stormrider descended the obsidian steps, with deliberate slowness, each footfall like the heartbeat of silence. Power radiated from him, thickening the air around them. His presence was a storm wrapped in flesh, broad shoulders beneath his ceremonial cloak. Eyes gleaming gold in the moonlight. Alara Blackwood of the fallen bloodline. He spoke, his voice deep as thunder rolling over mountains. You stand accused of aiding our sworn enemies, the Bloodclaw insurgents. What say you before your king? Alara lifted her face. Her lips were cracked, but her voice didn't falter. I saved a child, not a soldier. The words felt like stones, sinking into still water. If that's treason, she continued, then I accept my fate. A murmur rippled through the assembled wolves. Some expressed outrage, others surprise. The alpha's expression remained unchanged, but his gaze sharpened. You defied our border decree, he said. The punishment is death. I know, she whispered. That's why I didn't run. Her quiet defiance struck him like a pulse of light through shadow. Most wolves begged for mercy when faced with him, pleaded or broke. But she knelt there, bloodied and barefoot, her eyes steady with icy resolve. Kalen circled her, slowly studying her, like a predator assessing prey. The entire fortress seemed to hold its breath. When he stopped directly in front of her, his scent washed over her cedar smoke, mountain stone. Do not move, Omega, he commanded, his voice dropping to a whisper. Something in his tone, low and dangerous, froze her in place. The air between them seemed to thicken, pulsing with something ancient and unnameable. Then it happened. A spark of connection, electric and undeniable, leapt between them like lightning seeking ground. Alara gasped as a warmth bloomed at the base of her neck, spreading outward until her lungs ached. Kalen's hands shot out, gripping her chin, forcing her gaze to his. Golden eyes met blue, and the world around them seemed to fade. Walls, torches, whispers all drowned beneath the weight of that stare. Impossible, Kalen muttered, his composure cracking for the first time. In the shadowed corner of the courtyard, Vance Holloway straightened, recognition dawning on his aged face. For 50 years he had served 3 generations of alphas, witnessed the rise and fall of packs across the Sierra Nevada territories. He knew what that spark meant, had seen it only twice before in his long life. The mate bond, the unbreakable connection, the blessing or curse of the moon goddess herself. But this was impossible. Not with her. Not with a traitor whose bloodline should have been erased decades ago. Vance pushed forward through the crowd, his movements defying his 72 years. The nobles parted reluctantly, some sneering at the old wolf's presumption. His relevance had waned over the years, his counsel sought less and less by the young king who favored action over history's lessons. But tonight, history itself stood before them, demanding to be acknowledged. My King Vance, said, his voice quiet but carrying across the stone courtyard. May I approach? Kalen didn't look away from Alara, his hand still gripping her chin. Speak, old friend. Vance moved closer, studying the woman with eyes that had seen too much. The mark at her throat, he murmured. It bears the crescent of the bond. I see that, Kalen snapped, finally releasing Alara. She swayed slightly but remained kneeling. The old advisor knelt beside her, his knees protesting the cold stone. With gentle fingers he brushed her hair back from her neck, revealing the faint crescent mark beginning to glow silver beneath her skin. Then he looked up at his king, his voice dropping so only Kalen could hear. She bears another mark as well, my lord, one that should not exist. His weathered finger traced another faint pattern beneath her collarbone, a small spiral within a circle. The sigil of the Blackwood bloodline. Kaelin's breath caught. The Blackwoods were destroyed, every last one, he said. So we believed. Vance Holloway's eyes held both ancient wisdom and fresh concern. Until now. Kaelin straightened, addressing the gathered pack with renewed authority. Take her to the East Tower Post Guards. No one enters without my command. Two warriors stepped forward, roughly pulling Alara to her feet. As they led her away, her eyes met Vance's. Something passed between them, a question perhaps, or the shadow of a memory. Then she was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the fortress. The nobles dispersed in clusters of whispered speculation, leaving Kaelin alone with his advisor in the moonlight. When the courtyard had emptied, the Alpha turned to Vance. His composure carefully restored. Tell me everything, he commanded. Leave nothing hidden. Vance nodded gravely. We should speak in private, my king. The moon has ears tonight. The council chamber was warmed by a fire that cast long shadows across the stone walls. Maps covered the massive oak table territories, marked with the sigils of various packs that had claimed the Sierra Nevada mountains for generations. Kaelin paced while Vance stood by the hearth, the flames highlighting the deep lines etched into his face. 25 years ago, Vance began, his voice taking on the cadence of a historian. Your father led the assault on the Blackwood territory. 3 days of bloodshed, 3 nights of fire. None were to be spared, Kaelin murmured. Your father's command was absolute. Kaelin nodded. He had been merely a boy then, too young to fight but old enough to remember the smoke that had blackened the sky for weeks afterward. The Blackwoods were planning to overthrow the Alpha bloodline. Vance continued. They practiced forbidden magic. The attack was necessary. Vance's eyes reflected the dancing flames. So we were told. Kaelin stopped pacing. You doubt my father's word. I doubt what any of us truly knew then. Vance moved to the table, his fingers tracing the northern boundaries where the Blackwood territory had once been marked. Now it was simply labeled as Shadow Moon Hunting Grounds. I was there, Kaelin. I saw what happened. And Kaelin's patience was wearing thin. Vance met his gaze steadily. I saw a massacre, not a battle. I saw women and children put to the sword. I saw ancient texts burned that might have held wisdom we needed. He hesitated, weighing decades of silence against the truth now demanded of him. I saved a child, he whispered. A newborn with eyes the color of winter. The silence that followed was deafening. Kaelin stared at his advisor, disbelief warring with rage across his features. You betrayed my father, he said, voice hoarse with fury. I served a higher law, Vance replied, unrepentant. The laws of the moon, goddess herself, who forbids the slaughter of innocent cubs. I took the child to a human settlement 3 valleys away. I never expected to see her again. Vance shook his head slowly. Until tonight. Kaelin slammed his fist against the oak table, sending maps fluttering to the floor. You kept this from me for 25 years. Would you have been ready to hear it before now? Vance asked quietly, the young wolf who idolized his father. Kaelin turned away, struggling to master his emotions. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled, though barely. The mate bond. Is it possible with her? Vance moved to the ancient bookshelf that lined one wall of the chamber. His fingers found a leather-bound volume without hesitation, as if he had consulted it many times before. The bond doesn't lie, my king, but it can be complicated. He opened the book, revealing pages of faded ink and illustrations. There's another matter we must consider. His finger traced a passage written in the old tongue. The curse. Kaelin's jaw tightened. Every alpha in his line knew of the curse, the shadow that had followed their bloodline for generations. Every mate claimed by an alpha storm rider died before the next eclipse. 3 times, Kaelin muttered. I've felt the beginning of a bond, and 3 times I've awoken to find my chosen mate cold beside me. Life drained away in the night. If what you say is true, if she truly is Blackwood by blood. Kaelin's voice hardened. Then perhaps this is the moon goddess's final cruelty. To bind me to the bloodline my father destroyed. Vance Holloway closed the book with gentle reverence. Or perhaps it is her wisdom, not her cruelty, that guides this bond. A knock interrupted them. Rafe Draven, Kaelin's beta and most trusted warrior, entered without waiting for permission. His sharp features were set in barely concealed disdain as he glanced at Vance. The council awaits your decision regarding the prisoner, my king. Kaelin nodded. Tell them I will speak with them shortly. Rafe hesitated, his gaze flicking between the alpha and the advisor. They are growing restless. Lord Derek Stone suggests the traditional punishment be carried out swiftly before moonset. I am well aware of what the traditions demand, Rafe. Kaelin's tone left no room for argument. When the beta had departed, Vance spoke softly. Rafe never approved of my position in this court. He believes the old ways are weakness, not wisdom. Kalen countered. Rafe is loyal. He puts the pack's strength above all. Strength without wisdom is merely violence waiting to happen, Vance replied. His words carried the weight of a lesson learned over decades. What will you do with her? Kalen moved to the window, gazing out at the blood-red moon beginning its descent toward the mountains. I don't know. The bond complicates everything. Then perhaps Vance suggested gently you should speak with her again. The East Tower was the oldest part of Shadow Moon Fortress, its stones worn smooth by centuries of wind and weather. Alara stood at the narrow window, her fingers tracing the cold glass as she watched the moon begin its slow descent. Her wrist still bore the marks of silver chains, but she had been unbound upon entering the chamber. The room was far too grand for a prisoner's cell. A large bed with furs, a hearth with fresh logs, even a copper tub filled with steaming water in the corner. It was a room meant for guests, not traitors. The incongruity wasn't lost on her. The door opened without a knock. Alara didn't turn, recognizing the scent before she saw him. Cedar smoke power, Kalen. You should eat, he said, gesturing to the untouched tray of food on the small table. I'm not hungry. Her voice was soft, but not submissive. He crossed the room until he stood beside her at the window. For a long moment, neither spoke, both gazing out at the night sky painted with stars and shadow. Why did you do it? Kalen finally asked. Save the blood claw child. Alara's reflection in the glass showed no emotion. Because he was 7 years old. Because your warriors would have cut him down into the snow. They were following my orders. Then your orders were wrong. She turned to face him, unflinching. No child deserves to die for the crimes of their elders. Kalen studied her, searching for deception, and finding none. You understand that the Bloodclaws have killed dozens of our pack over the last decade, that they raid our territories and poison our hunting grounds. And how many of theirs have you killed in return? Alara countered. When does it end, Alpha? When there's no one left to hunt. A muscle in his jaw ticked at her boldness. Few dared speak to him this way, yet, instead of anger, he felt curiosity stirring. Vance says you're Blackwood by blood. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise perhaps, or weariness. I wouldn't know. I was raised by humans in a town 3 valleys from here. Yet you found your way back, not by choice. Her hands clenched at her sides. My abilities manifested when I turned 16. The humans feared what they couldn't understand. She sighed, her gaze growing distant. I've been wandering these mountains for years, belonging nowhere. Kalen stepped closer, his presence filling the space between them. The mark at her throat pulsed faintly, responding to his proximity. And yet the bond chose you. Why? Alara. Ask your moon goddess, Alara replied bitterly. I never asked for this connection, nor did I. His admission surprised them both. The silence that followed felt charged, dangerous in its intensity. Kalen reached out his fingers, hovering near the mark on her neck without touching it. Do you feel it? The pull. Alara's breath hitched. I feel something. I don't know what it means. It means, he said, his voice dropping to a whisper, that we are bound, whether we wish it or not. Outside, a wolf howled, long, mournful notes that echoed through the night. Others joined, creating a chorus that seemed to voice the confusion and tension between the 2 souls in the tower room. Kalen stepped back abruptly. You'll remain here until I decide what to do with you. You'll be treated well but guarded. Try to escape and my mercy will end. As he turned to leave, Alara called after him. The bond doesn't make me your possession, Alpha. He paused at the door. No, it makes you something far more dangerous. The door closed behind him, with finality, leaving Alara alone with questions that had no answers, and a mark that continued to burn like moonfire beneath her skin. Vance Holloway made his way through the fortress corridors, his steps sure despite the dim lighting. Age had not diminished his memory of these ancient halls. He had walked them since boyhood, watching 3 generations of Alpha's rule from these stone walls. As he approached the East Tower, guards straightened at his presence. The king's orders were clear when stated no visitors for the prisoner. Vance smiled faintly. I'm not a visitor, young wolf. I'm the king's emissary. He held out a folded parchment bearing Kalen's seal, a document concerning an entirely different matter. But the young guard wouldn't know the difference. He wishes me to question her further about her origins. The guards exchanged glances before reluctantly stepping aside. Vance nodded his thanks and entered the tower room, closing the door firmly behind him. Alara stood immediately, weariness evident in her posture. Vance Holloway, she said quietly, the king's advisor. Among other things, he replied, moving to sit in the chair nearest the fire. His joints ached in the mountain chill. Do you remember me, child? Alara's brow furrowed. Vance studied her face in the firelight, searching for traces of the infant he had carried through snow-covered forest 25 years ago. Perhaps not consciously. You were very young when we met. Understanding dawned slowly in her eyes. You knew me before. I saved you, he said simply the night the Blackwood pack fell. Alara sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. My parents, my family. Her voice faltered. Vance's eyes filled with sorrow. Gone, child. All of them. It was a night of great darkness. Why play the question contained a lifetime of longing. Why did it happen? Fear, Vance replied. Fear of what your bloodline represented, of the old powers you carried. He leaned forward, voice dropping to ensure they weren't overheard. Powers that still flow in your veins, whether you recognize them or not. Alara's hand moved unconsciously to the faint spiral mark beneath her collarbone. These abilities I have. The feeling of something inside me. Something that was silenced long ago. That comes from them. From the Blackwoods. Vance nodded. Your bloodline were keepers of the old magic. Healers, dreamwalkers, those who could speak to the moon herself. Kaelin's father feared that power. Feared it might someday challenge his own. And now you're bound to his son. The irony wasn't lost on her. The moon goddess works in patterns beyond our understanding, Vance said. Perhaps this is her way of healing an ancient wound. Alara stood, moving to the window, or reopening it. Vance rose as well, his aged frame moving with deliberate dignity. Either way, you are in danger, child. There are those in this fortress who would see you dead rather than bound to their alpha. You mean Rafe? The old advisor's eyebrows rose slightly. You're perceptive. I saw how he looked at me during the trial. Like I was vermin to be exterminated. She turned to face Vance fully. Why are you telling me this? Why help me at all? Vance's weathered hand reached into his robe, extracting a small object wrapped in leather. Because I made a promise the night I saved you. A promise to your mother, as she lay dying. He unwrapped the leather, revealing a small pendant carved from moonstone, a spiral within a circle matching the mark on Alara's skin. She made me swear to return this to you if you survived. To teach you what it means to be Blackwood. Alara took the pendant with trembling fingers. The stone felt warm to her touch, pulsing with gentle energy. You've kept this all these years. I keep my promises, Vance said simply. Even those that take decades to fulfill. A noise in the corridor alerted them both. Vance Holloway quickly moved toward the door. I cannot stay longer without raising suspicion, but I will return. There is much you need to know. Alara clutched the pendant tightly. Why should I trust you? The old advisor paused, his hand on the door. Because unlike most in this fortress, I remember what it means to serve something greater than power. The truth, child. I serve the truth. After he had gone, Alara opened her hand to study the pendant. As the moonlight touched its surface, the spiral pattern began to glow with soft silver light. Something stirred deep within her, a flutter of recognition, an awakening. The wolf she had thought silenced forever whimpered softly in the hollow of her soul. For the first time in years, Alara felt the wild creature inside her respond. Dawn painted the mountain's gold-bathing shadow moon fortress, in gentle light that belied the tensions brewing within its walls. The council chamber hummed with voices raised in argument. Nobles and warriors alike demanded justice for what they perceived as their alpha's weakness. The law is clear. Lord Derek Stone insisted, his gray beard quivering with indignation. Any who aid our enemies forfeit their lives. That she bears a potential mate mark changes nothing. Rafe Draven stood beside him, arms crossed over his broad chest. The pack questions your judgment, my king. To spare her because of some mystical connection, it appears weak. Kaelin stood at the head of the long table, unmoved by their protests. I have not said I will spare her. I've said I will consider all aspects of the situation before passing judgment. What is there to consider? Rafe pressed. She admits her guilt freely. Vance Holloway, standing silently in the corner, finally spoke. There is the matter of her bloodline to consider. The last Blackwood that has implications. Rafe's laugh held no humor. Ah yes, the old man speaks of ancient bloodlines again. Tell us, Vance, what dusty tomes have you consulted this time? Several council members chuckled, but Vance's calm never wavered. Mock if you wish. Rafe, but history has a way of repeating itself when ignored. Enough, Kaelin commanded. The single word silenced the chamber instantly. I will speak with the prisoner again today, alone. His gaze swept the room, challenging anyone to object. Until then she remains under guard but unharmed. As the council dispersed, Rafe lingered behind, waiting until they were alone. A private word, my king, Rafe said. Kalen nodded, though his patience was wearing thin. This bond, Rafe began carefully. It's affected your judgment. You've experienced this before 3 times now, and each ended in tragedy. Why court more pain? I'm not courting anything, Kalen replied coldly. I'm considering all possibilities before acting. Rafe stepped closer, lowering his voice. The elders haven't told you everything about the curse. Each mate who dies strengthens it. Rafe continued. Each death pulls you further from humanity, closer to the beast. If this woman dies like the others did, I know the risks. Kalen's voice was sharp. Do you weigh them? Rafe's eyes held genuine concern. The last eclipse nearly broke you. Another loss might transform you completely. Kalen turned away, unwilling to acknowledge the truth in Rafe's words. After his last mate died, he had spent 3 days in wolf form, unable or unwilling to return to his human shape. The memory of that wildness of losing control still haunted him. I appreciate your concern, old friend, he said finally. But my decision stands. We wait. Rafe bowed slightly. As you wish, my king. He departed, leaving Kalen alone with thoughts as turbulent as storm clouds. Unknown to the Alpha, Rafe made his way not to his quarters, but to a seldom-used part of the fortress, there in a chamber, whose walls were etched with symbols few remembered how to read. 3 elders waited. Their faces were grim as Rafe entered. Well, one asked. He refuses to act. Rafe replied, frustration evident in his tone. The bond has already clouded his judgment. The eldest among them, a woman, whose face bore the scars of many battles, shook her head slowly. Then we must act for him. For the good of the pack. Rafe hesitated. What you suggest borders on treason. What we suggest, she countered, is preservation. The curse must run its course, Rafe. If this Blackwood woman lives to see the eclipse, everything we've built could unravel. He paced the small chamber, conflicted. Kalen trusts me. Then use that trust, another elder urged. Get close to the woman. Learn what she knows. And when the time comes... The words hung in the air unspoken, but understood. Rafe Draven nodded reluctantly. For the pack, he said, his voice steady. Always for the pack. In the temple at the heart of the fortress, Vance Holloway knelt before the ancient altar. His fingers traced patterns in the spilled moon water. The liquid glowed faintly in the dim light, forming symbols that shifted and changed with his touch. His eyes were closed in concentration, his lips moving in silent prayer. Show me, he whispered to the moon goddess. Show me if the time has truly come. The water beneath his fingers began to glow brighter, forming a perfect crescent that matched the mark on Alara's neck. Then slowly it transformed into the spiral of the Blackwood bloodline. Finally, the 2 symbols merged, creating a pattern Vance had seen only once before in a prophecy recorded centuries ago. The old advisor opened his eyes, a mixture of awe and dread filling his heart. So it begins, he murmured. After all these years, the circle closes. He rose stiffly, gathering the ancient texts he had brought with him. There was much to prepare, much to teach Alara before the eclipse. Time was short, and the enemies of truth were already moving against them. Vance made his way through the fortress with renewed purpose. Age might have diminished his standing in the eyes of the young wolves, but it had given him something they lacked: patience. For 50 years he had waited for this moment, had kept faith when others forgot the old ways. Now finally the moon goddess had answered his lifelong prayer. The last Blackwood had returned. The curse that haunted the night-shaped bloodline might finally be broken. If Vance thought grimly, they all survived long enough to see it happen. Morning light filtered through the tower window, casting long shadows across the stone floor. Alara sat cross-legged on the bed, the Blackwood pendant cradled in her palms. For hours she had studied its intricate spiral pattern, feeling pulses of energy emanate from the moonstone with each beat of her heart. Something within her responded to its presence, something wild and ancient that had slumbered for too long. A soft knock interrupted her concentration. The door opened to reveal Vance carrying a stack of worn, leather-bound books and a cloth-wrapped bundle. The guards peered suspiciously into the room before allowing the elder advisor to enter. By order of the Alpha, Vance announced formally, loud enough for the guards to hear. I am to question the prisoner about Bloodclaw movements in the Northern Territories. Once the door closed, his formal demeanor softened. He set his burden on the small table and looked at Alara with eyes that had seen generations come and go. You've been communing with the pendant, he observed, noting the faint silver glow emanating from the stone. Good. It remembers you. Alara closed her fingers around the moonstone. It feels alive, like it's trying to tell me something I've forgotten. In a way it is, Vance replied. He unwrapped the cloth bundle, revealing dried herbs, crystals, and small vials of liquid that caught the morning light. The pendant is more than jewelry. It's a key to unlocking what was taken from you. My wolf, Alara whispered. I've felt her presence since you gave me this. Stronger than ever before. Vance nodded satisfaction, creasing his weathered face. The silver poisoning you endured as punishment suppressed your ability to shift, but it didn't destroy your true nature. Nothing could. He gestured to the items he had brought. These will help accelerate the healing process. Why are you doing this? Alara asked, watching as he arranged the items with practiced precision. Helping me could be considered treason. Vance's hands paused, his eyes taking on a faraway look. 25 years ago, I stood among the ashes of your ancestral home. The air was thick with death and loss. Your mother found me as I searched the ruins for survivors. His voice grew softer, heavy with memory. She was mortally wounded, but her only concern was for you. She placed you in my arms and made me swear to protect you. With her final breath, she told me you were special, that you carried the blood of healers. He looked up, meeting Alara's gaze with unexpected intensity. I failed to save your people, the child. I will not fail to save their legacy. Alara swallowed the emotion rising in her throat. And what is that legacy? What does it mean to be? Blackwood. Vance opened the largest of the books he had brought, revealing pages filled with illustrations of wolves, moons, and ancient symbols. The Blackwood bloodline were keepers of balance between wolf and human, between pack and moon. They were healers who could draw pain from others, dreamwalkers who could traverse the veil between worlds, and most rare of all, they were the ones who could break curses. Alara's eyes widened. The curse that affects Kalen, that kills his mates. Yes. Vance turned the pages until he found what he was searching for, an illustration of a wolf with a crescent moon carved into its flesh. For generations, every mate bonded to an alpha. Stormrider has died before the next eclipse. 3 times Kalen had felt the beginning of a bond, and 3 times he had awakened to find death beside him. Alara felt a chill, despite the warmth of the room. Am I marked as his next victim? Or his salvation? Vance Holloway pointed to another illustration, a wolf surrounded by silver light, breaking free from chains. The prophecy speaks of one who carries dual marks, the crescent of the mate, and the spiral of the healer. One who will either save the Alpha Kings, or destroy him completely. Alara touched the faint marks on her skin, the crescent at her throat, which had appeared when Kalen first spoke to her, and the spiral birthmark beneath her collarbone. You believe that's me? I know it is, Vance said with certainty. But knowledge alone isn't enough. You need to reclaim your power, your true form. Only then will you have a chance against what's coming. Alara looked at the items he'd arranged, herbs she recognized from her years living in the wilderness, crystals that seemed to pulse with inner light, and vials of liquid that smelled of moonlight and forest. What do I need to do? Vance smiled, pleased by her resolve. First, we awaken your wolf. For the next hour, Vance guided Alara through ancient breathing techniques, teaching her to connect with the wild presence inside her. He mixed herbs into a tea that tasted of earth and stars, explaining how each ingredient would help cleanse the silver from her system. As she drank, he spoke of the Blackwood history stories, of healing and sacrifice, of communion with the moon goddess, and of the sacred duty to maintain balance. Alara listened, absorbing each word like parched earth drinks rain. These were her people, her heritage. With each story, she felt something within her grow stronger, more insistent. The wolf was awakening. Now, Vance said when she had finished the tea, close your eyes. Feel your connection to the earth beneath the fortress, to the moon, even though it sleeps beyond the horizon. Feel the pull of your true nature. Alara obeyed, sinking into herself, past conscious thought, past human limitations. In the darkness behind her eyes, she sensed something moving, a presence, both familiar and foreign, silvery gray with eyes that matched her own. Her wolf not gone, never truly gone, but chained, suppressed, waiting. She's there, Alara whispered, her voice filled with wonder. I can feel her. Call to her, Vance urged softly. Not with words, but with your heart. Tell her it's time to return. Alara reached into the darkness, extending her consciousness toward the wolf. I'm here, she thought. I remember you. Come back to me. Pain shot through her, suddenly bone-deep, searing, as if her body were being torn apart from within. She gasped, doubling over on the bed. Vance's hand found her shoulder, steadying her. Breathe through it, he instructed calmly. The transformation is painful the first time after suppression. Your body is remembering its true form. Alara gritted her teeth, sweat beading on her forehead. The pain intensified, racing along her spine, down her limbs. Her vision blurred, the room's contours melting into pools of light and shadow. Inside her mind, the wolf moved closer, no longer separated by darkness. That's it, Vance encouraged. Let her come. Don't fight the change. With a cry that was half human, half howl, Alara surrendered to the transformation. Her bones shifted, cracking and reforming. First her skin rippled with silver gray, then her face elongated into a muzzle, her teeth sharpening into canine points. The world around her transformed as well. Colors fading, senses intensifying until she could smell the history embedded in the stones themselves. And then stillness. The pain receded, like a tide, leaving behind a strange new wholeness. Alara looked down at the pose where her hands had been, felt the weight of her tail, the keenness of her senses. She was a wolf again, for the first time in years. Vance gazed at her with undisguised awe. Beautiful, he murmured. A true Blackwood wolf. Alara moved carefully around the room, reacquainting herself with four-legged motion. Everything felt different in this form, more immediate, more vibrant. She could hear conversations 3 floors below, could smell the approach of clouds promising afternoon rain, and through it all, a new awareness of the bond pulsed at her throat, connecting her to Kaelin, even through stone walls and distance. A commotion in the hallway caught their attention. Heavy footsteps approached rapidly. Vance moved to stand between Alara and the door, just as it burst open. Kaelin strode in, his expression thunderous. Behind him, Rafe Draven watched with calculating eyes. Kaelin stopped abruptly at the sight of the silver wolf standing beside his elderly advisor. Recognition flooded his golden eyes. "What have you done?" he demanded of Vance, though his gaze remained fixed on Alara. The old advisor stood firm, dignity lending him strength. "I've helped her reclaim what was wrongfully taken from her, my king, her true form." Rafe Draven pushed forward. "This is treason, old man. You've restored power to a prisoner, a traitor." "She is Blackwood," Vance replied calmly, "the last of her bloodline. And she is bound to our alpha by the goddess herself. Would you have her remain crippled when she might be the key to breaking the curse?" Kaelin raised a hand, silencing Rafe's retort. He approached Alara, slowly studying her wolf form with an intensity that made her want to retreat. Instead, she stood taller, meeting his gaze with eyes that were unmistakably hers. Ice blue against her silver fur. "Shift back," he commanded softly. Alara hesitated, unsure if she could control the transformation so soon. Vance nodded encouragingly. "Focus on your human form. Visualize the change." Closing her eyes, Alara concentrated on returning to herself. The process was quicker this time, less painful. Within moments, she stood before them in her human form. Her clothes were miraculously intact. Another gift of the Blackwood bloodline, Vance had explained earlier. Kaelin circled her slowly, the predator in him evident with each deliberate step. "How long have you been planning this, Vance?" "Since the night I recognized her in the courtyard," the advisor admitted. "But in truth, I've been waiting for this moment for 25 years. Rafe scoffed. "You expect us to believe this woman? This criminal is the answer to a prophecy that she can break a curse that has plagued our bloodline for generations. I expect you to consider all possibilities," Vance replied evenly. As any wise leader would. Kaelin stopped directly before Alara, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could sense the wolf beneath his skin, straining toward hers. The bond between them pulsed stronger now that her wolf was awakened. "What did it feel like?" he asked quietly, shifting again after so long. The question surprised her. It wasn't what she had expected from him. Not anger, not accusations, just genuine curiosity. Like coming home, she answered honestly. Like being whole again. Something flickered across his face, understanding perhaps, or longing. Kaelin knew what it meant to be separated from one's true nature. After each mate's death, he had struggled to maintain his human form, the grief and rage threatening to consume him. "The curse," he said, turning to Vance. "You truly believe she can break it?" Vance nodded solemnly. "She bears both marks, my king, the crescent and the spiral. According to the oldest texts, such a one is destined to either end the curse or end the bloodline." Rafe stepped forward, his voice sharp with warning. "And you would risk everything on ancient superstitions. The eclipse is less than a month away." "If she fails," Rafe added. "If she dies like the others, you know what will happen." "I'll lose myself completely." Kaelin finished the words, heavy with dread. "The beast will consume what remains of the man." Alara looked between them, understanding dawning. That's why you've become more wolf than man with each death. The curse doesn't just kill your mates, she said quietly. It destroys pieces of your humanity. Kaylin's gaze snapped to hers, surprised by her perception. Yes. A charged silence filled the room. Rafe watched with narrowed eyes, calculating. Vance stood resolute, believing in the path he had set before them. And Kaylin, the Alpha King, the cursed ruler, stood at a crossroads, weighing duty against hope. Finally he spoke. She will remain in the East Tower, but no longer as a prisoner, as a guest. As he hesitated, the word felt foreign on his tongue. Potential Luna. Rafe's objection was immediate. My king, the council will never. The council doesn't rule here, Kaylin cut him off. I do, and I have decided. He turned to Vance. You will continue her instruction. Teach her what it means to be Blackwood. Prepare her for what lies ahead. Then to Elara. You will not leave these walls without escort. You will not communicate with anyone outside the fortress. Understood? Elara nodded, recognizing the concession for what it was, not freedom, but a loosening of chains. Good. Kaylin moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at her with eyes that held too many emotions to name. Shift again tonight. Run in the inner courtyard. Your wolf needs to remember her strength. After they had gone, Elara turned to Vance Holloway. Questions tumbling from her. What happens now? How do I break a curse I know nothing about? What if Rafe is right and I die like the others? The old advisor's face was grave, but his determination was clear. Now we prepare. The eclipse approaches, and with it the moment of greatest danger and greatest possibility. He gathered his books, his movements deliberate despite his age. Rest today. Tonight you run. Tomorrow we begin your true education as a Blackwood. As evening descended over the Sierra Nevada mountains, the sky darkened to a deep indigo. Stars emerged like scattered diamonds across the vault of heaven, and a half-moon rose casting silver light over Shadow Moon Fortress. In the inner courtyard, sheltered from prying eyes by ancient stone walls, Kaylin waited. He had dismissed his usual guards, wanting no witnesses to what was about to transpire. Only Vance stood nearby, a silent guardian of traditions, long forgotten by most. The air held the scent of pine and approaching rain, and somewhere in the distance, a lone wolf's howl rang out, announcing the night's beginning. Will she come? Kaylin asked, his voice betraying more eagerness than he intended. Vance smiled faintly. She will. The wolf craves freedom once awakened. As if summoned by his words, Elara emerged from the shadows of the East Tower. She had changed from her simple prisoner's garb, now wearing soft leather pants and a loose tunic of deep blue that complemented her eyes. Around her neck, the Blackwood pendant gleamed in the moonlight. She approached cautiously, her gaze never leaving Kaylin. The bond between them thrummed with awareness, with possibility. Neither spoke for a long moment, each measuring the other without the barriers of formal roles. Finally, Kaylin broke the silence. Show me your wolf. Elara closed her eyes, her transformation smoother now, quicker. Within seconds, the silver wolf stood before him, magnificent in the moonlight. Kaylin circled her, slowly admiring the rare coloring, the strength evident in her lean form. Then, with a fluidity born of a lifetime shifting between forms, he transformed as well. His wolf was massive, black as midnight, with eyes of molten gold. Power radiated from him, the Alpha's dominance, a tangible force in the air. Side by side they created a striking tableau, shadow and light, night and moon, perfectly balanced, opposites. Vance stepped back, giving them space. Run, he encouraged. Remember what it means to be wolf. Elara moved first, racing across the courtyard, with a grace that belied her years of suppression. Kaylin followed quickly, overtaking her, leading her through hidden passages and sheltered gardens within the fortress walls. They ran beneath the stars, two wolves freed momentarily from the burdens of prophecy and curse. For Elara, the experience was intoxicating. The wind in her fur, the earth beneath her paws, the moonlight bathing her in silver. These sensations, long denied, flooded her with joy. Beside her, Kaylin ran with powerful strides, occasionally brushing against her flank, guiding her through territory she didn't know. In wolf form, the complications of their human lives receded. There was no prisoner and king, no curse or salvation. There was only the run, the night, the primal connection to each other and to the moon above. They paused at a small reflecting pool, both bending to drink the cool water. The reflections rippled together, black wolf and silver, and something passed between them, an understanding beyond words. Elara felt Kaylin's loneliness, his fear of the approaching eclipse. He sensed her determination, her newfound purpose. A sound caught their attention, footsteps approaching from the main hall. Instantly alert, Kalen positioned himself before Alara, his massive form a shield. Rafe Draven appeared at the courtyard entrance, surprise evident in his expression before he masked it with his usual cool detachment. "My apologies for interrupting, my king," he said, addressing Kalen, despite his wolf form. It was common knowledge that alphas could understand human speech even while shifted. The northern sentinels have reported movement along the border. Bloodclaw scouts, possibly. Kalen growled low in his throat, clearly displeased by the interruption. With obvious reluctance, he shifted back to human form, his naked torso gleaming in the moonlight. How many, he demanded. At least 6, moving in pairs. They seemed to be searching for something. Rafe's gaze slid to Alara, still in wolf form. Or someone. Kalen's posture stiffened. "Post additional guards along the northern wall. Double the patrols until dawn. I'll join the sentinel team at first light." Rafe nodded, his attention still fixed on Alara. "And what of our guest?" he asked. "If the Bloodclaws are searching for her, perhaps they have plans we should know about." Alara stays within the fortress, Kalen replied firmly, "under my protection." "Of course, my king." Rafe bowed slightly, but his eyes held calculation. "I'll inform the council of your decision." Kalen Stormrider stopped abruptly. "Shift back, our run is over for tonight." Alara obeyed, the transformation growing easier with each practice. When she stood before him in human form, she saw the weariness etched across his features, the weight of leadership visible in the set of his shoulders. "You think the Bloodclaws are looking for me?" she asked. "It's possible." Kalen gazed toward the mountains as if he could see beyond stone and distance to the threats gathering there. "You saved one of their young. Perhaps they seek to return the favor, or perhaps they see you as a potential weapon against us." "I'm not a weapon," Alara said firmly. "I won't be used by either side in this endless war." Kalen turned back to her, his expression softening slightly. "What will you be then?" "Alara Blackwood healer, Luna savior." His voice lowered. "Or will you be my doom, as the prophecy warns might happen?" The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Alara touched the pendant at her throat, drawing strength from its connection to her heritage. "I will be what I choose to be," she answered. "Forget what prophecies or curses or ancient feuds dictate." A smile touched Kalen's lips, brief and unexpected, transforming his stern features. "Vance chose well, all those years ago. You have the Blackwood spirit regardless of what else you may have forgotten." He stepped closer, his presence filling her senses. The bond between them pulsed stronger with proximity, a steady rhythm like a second heartbeat. His hand lifted fingers, hovering near the crescent mark at her throat, without touching it. "The curse will try to take you," he said softly, "as it took the others. I can feel it already, circling us, hungry for your light." Alara held his gaze steadily. "Then we'll fight it together." Together, he repeated the word, foreign on his tongue. Kalen Stormrider had stood alone for so long, bearing the weight of leadership and curse, without sharing either burden. The concept of partnership, of trust, was almost forgotten. The moment stretched between them, fraught with unspoken possibilities. Then Kalen stepped back, his expression closing once more. "Rest," he commanded, though his voice held less authority than before. "Tomorrow the real work begins." True to Kalen's prediction, dawn brought new challenges. Alara awoke to find Vance Holloway waiting in her chamber, his arms filled with ancient texts and artifacts. Behind him stood a woman Alara hadn't met before, tall, regal, with silver hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that had seen decades of pack politics. "Alara, this is Maeve Ashford, keeper of Lunalore," Vance introduced. "She will instruct you in the traditions expected of an alpha's mate." Maeve surveyed Alara with a critical eye. "She's thin for a wolf, and those clothes won't do at all for council appearances." Alara bristled at being discussed, as if she weren't present. "I'm not concerned with appearances," she said. "I need to understand the curse, not pack fashion." A smile touched Maeve's stern lips. "Spirited good. You'll need that fire in the days ahead." She set a bundle on the bed, clothing and rich fabrics of deep blue and silver. But appearances matter in a world ruled by wolves who judge strength before all else. Dress the part of Luna while Vance teaches you its substance. The day that followed was intense, filled with more information than Alara could fully absorb. Maeve drilled her in impact protocol, the complex hierarchy that governed wolf society, and the specific responsibilities of a Luna traditions Alara would need to navigate if she were to be accepted by the Shadow Moon Pack. Meanwhile, Vance focused on her Blackwood heritage. He taught her to channel the energy of her pendant, to sense the imbalances in others that might require healing. By midday, Alara could detect the chronic pain in Maeve's right hip and old battle wounds. By evening, She had learned to draw some of that pain into herself temporarily, relieving the older woman's discomfort. The ability to heal comes with responsibility, Vance cautioned as Alara winced from absorbing the pain. Your bloodline carries the gift of taking others' suffering, but you must learn to transform it, not merely contain it. That was the great wisdom of the Blackwoods, he continued. They could take darkness and transmute it to light. Is that how I'll break the curse? Alara asked, massaging her aching hand where Maeve's pain now resided. The curse is far more powerful than physical pain. Vance's expression grew troubled. It was created through death, through betrayal of the deepest kind. To break it, he hesitated. The texts speak of sacrifice of blood freely given, but the exact nature of what's required was lost when your family's library burned. Alara absorbed this troubling information in silence. The more she learned of her heritage, the more she understood the enormity of what had been lost when the Blackwood pack was destroyed. Generations of knowledge, of carefully preserved wisdom, reduced to ash in a single night of violence. As dusk approached, a knock at the door interrupted their lessons. Kalen Stormrider entered, his expression grave. Behind him came Rafe Draven, whose eyes narrowed slightly at the sight of Alara, dressed in the traditional colors of Luna. The Bloodclaw Scouts have withdrawn, Kalen Stormrider announced, but they left this. He held out a small object wrapped in leather. It was pinned to a sentinel tree at our border. Vance Holloway took the object carefully, unwrapping it to reveal a carved wooden token bearing the symbol of the Bloodclaw pack, a crescent moon pierced by a fang. Attached to it was a folded note. The old advisor read it silently, his weathered face growing paler with each word. What does it say? Alara asked, dread pooling in her stomach. Vance looked up, his eyes meeting hers. It's addressed to you, from Kayla Kane of the Bloodclaw Council. Rafe Draven stepped forward. Kayla Kane, the son of their alpha. Yes. Vance handed the note to Alara, and apparently, someone from your past. Alara unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. The handwriting was achingly familiar, though she hadn't seen it in years. Alara, Blackwood, word reached us of your capture. The child you saved as well, thanks to your sacrifice. Now we would repay that debt. 3 nights from now, when the moon is dark, we will come for you. Be ready. There are things you should know. Truths about your past, about the curse that binds the Stormrider King. Don't trust what they tell you. The man you once knew still remembers, still waits until the new moon. Kayla. Alara lowered the note, her mind reeling. Kayla. The name unlocked memories she had buried deep. A young man with kind eyes and a gentle smile, who had found her wandering the forest 5 years ago, half-starved and afraid of her own abilities. He had helped her, protected her until a border skirmish with Shadow Moon wolves had separated them. She had believed him dead. You know him, Kalen said. It wasn't a question. Alara nodded slowly. He helped me once when I had nowhere to go. I didn't know he was Bloodclaw then. He never told me. Rafe's voice cut like a blade. How convenient. The enemy just happens to have a personal connection to the woman who bears our alpha's mate mark. He turned to Kalen. Can't you see? She's their plan, their weapon against you. Alara protested. I haven't seen Kayla in years. I didn't even know he was alive until now. Kalen's face had hardened into an unreadable mask. What truth does he claim to know about the curse? About your past? I don't know, Alara answered honestly. But I'm not leaving with him. Whatever he knows, I can learn here. From Vance. From... She hesitated. From you. Kalen studied her for a long moment, weighing her words against the suspicion Rafe had planted. The bond between them vibrated with tension, with uncertainty. The new moon is when you're most vulnerable, Vance interjected quietly. When the curse grows strongest. It's no coincidence they plan to come for you then. Kalen made a decision. Double the guards beginning tomorrow. No one enters or leaves without my direct approval. His gaze returned to Alara. And you will not be alone at any time. Not even for a moment. You think I'll try to escape? Alara asked, hurt, coloring her voice. I think forces are aligning against us both, Kalen replied. And I won't take chances with what might be our only hope of breaking the curse. He glanced at the Blackwood pendant around her neck. Continue your training. Learn everything Vance can teach you before the new moon arrives. With that, he departed, Rafe following close behind. Maeve Ashford excused herself as well, leaving Alara alone with Vance. The old advisor sighed heavily, sinking into a chair by the fire. This complicates matters, he said. The Bloodclaws have their own prophecies, their own interpretations of your role. They would use you, just as Rafe fears, though, not in the way he imagines. Alara paced the room. Kayla's note clutched in her hand. What do you mean? Vance stared into the flames, his voice dropping to ensure they weren't overheard. There is another aspect of the curse not recorded in our texts. But I have heard rumors from wolves who trade across pack lines. It's said that the death of each alpha's mate doesn't just strengthen the curse. It feeds power to someone else. Someone who gains strength with each sacrifice. Alara stopped pacing, the chill running through her, despite the fire's warmth. Who I don't know. Vance's eyes reflected the dancing flames, but I fear we'll find out all too soon. The next morning dawned, gray and cold clouds hanging low over the mountains like a shroud. Alara stood at her window watching rain beat against the glass, trying to process everything she'd learned. Alara's mind kept returning to Jackson Vale's note, to the cryptic warnings it contained. What truth did he know? Could she trust Vance Holloway's teachings? Or was she being led down a path that would end in her destruction? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Kalen Stormrider, rain still glistening in his dark hair. He wore simpler clothes than usual, a black tunic and leather pants, no symbols of his rank. His expression was guarded, but something in his eyes had softened since their confrontation the previous evening. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't quite a command, but neither was it a request. Alara followed him through the fortress quarters, noting the increased guard presence. Warriors nodded respectfully as they passed, though many cast curious or suspicious glances at her. News of Jackson Vale's note had clearly spread. Kalen led her to a part of the fortress she hadn't seen before, a massive library with ceilings that soared 2 stories high and shelves packed with books, scrolls, and artifacts. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting patterns of color across the stone floor. The Shadow Moon Archives, Kalen explained, watching her reaction. Centuries of our history and knowledge. Some of these texts date back to the first Alpha. Alara moved through the space with wonder, her fingers trailing along the leather-bound volumes. It's incredible. I've never seen so many books in one place. Few have. This library is restricted to pack leadership and scholars. Kalen followed her, his presence a constant shadow. Vance practically lives here when he's not fulfilling his council duties. Why show me this? Alara asked, turning to face him. Kalen's gaze was steady, assessing. Because knowledge is power in our world. If you truly wish to understand the curse, to break it rather than fall victim to it, you'll need access to everything we know. He led her to a specific section where the shelves were marked with silver symbols. These are the texts, salvaged from the Blackwood territory. He hesitated. After the conflict, not many survived the fires, but what we have is yours to study. Alara stared at the shelves, emotion tightening her throat. These books had belonged to her family, her ancestors. They represented a small fragment of the heritage that had been stolen from her. Thank you, she said softly. Kalen nodded, then gestured to a large table where Vance Holloway had already waited, surrounded by open books and unrolled scrolls. Your education continues today. I've instructed Vance to hold nothing back and to teach you everything he knows about both bloodlines and the curse that binds them. Will you stay? The question slipped out before Alara could reconsider it. Something flickered across Kalen's face, surprise perhaps, or uncertainty. I have duties that require my attention, he said, his voice tight. The Bloodclaw message has the council in an uproar. He hesitated, then added, but I will return later. There are aspects of the curse that only I have experienced. Things you should know. After he had gone, Alara joined Vance at the table. The old advisor smiled warmly, pleased by this development. Our Alpha doesn't grant access to these archives lightly, he said. You've earned a measure of trust, it seems. Or he's desperate, Alara replied, though without bitterness. The new moon is approaching, and with it the risk of another loss. Perhaps both are true. Vance indicated the materials he'd gathered. Today, we focus on the origin of the curse. Its beginning may hold the key to its ending. For hours they immersed themselves in ancient texts, piecing together the fragmented history of the feud between the Stormrider and Blackwood bloodlines. Alara learned of an alliance long ago, 2 powerful packs joined through marriage-sharing territories and knowledge. The Stormriders were warriors, protectors. The Blackwoods were healers, peacekeepers. Together they had maintained balance across the Sierra Nevada territories for generations. Then what happened? Alara asked, studying a faded family tree that showed the intermarriage of the 2 bloodlines. What turned allies into enemies? Vance pulled forward an ancient journal, its pages brittle with age. Betrayal. A forbidden love. And blood spilled beneath an eclipsed moon. He pointed to an entry dated nearly 200 years earlier. The Alpha King of that time, Matthias Stormrider, had taken a Blackwood bride. Their union was celebrated as the strengthening of an ancient bond. But the Alpha's brother Sebastian loved her as well. Alara read the faded text, a chill running through her as the tragic story unfolded. Sebastian had conspired with dark forces, practicing forbidden magic to win the Luna's heart. When she rejected him, choosing loyalty to her mate, and Pax Sebastian's love had twisted into obsession, then hatred. On the night of a lunar eclipse, he had murdered her in a blood ritual designed to curse his brother's bloodline for all time. The first victim of the curse was Sebastian himself, Vance Holloway explained. Matthias Stormrider executed him for his crimes. But with his dying breaths, Sebastian bound his spirit to the curse, declaring that no Nightshade Alpha would ever know love without loss. That each mate's death would feed his power in the Shadow Realm. Alara looked up from the journal, horror dawning in her eyes. So each time a Luna dies, Sebastian grows stronger. Yes, Vance confirmed grimly. And the beast within the Alpha gains ground against the man. The curse is designed to destroy both lover and beloved, leaving only monsters in their place. But I'm Blackwood, Alara said, thoughts racing. If the curse was created to destroy a Blackwood Luna, why would my bloodline be the key to breaking it? Vance turned to another text, this one bound in silver-tooled leather. Because balance demands it, he said. What Blackwood blood helped create, only Blackwood blood can undo. But the exact method, he sighed heavily. That knowledge was lost when your family's libraries burned. Alara sat back, overwhelmed by the weight of history and expectation pressing down on her. So I'm supposed to break a 200-year-old curse without knowing how, while fighting against a vengeful spirit that grows stronger with each death. She shook her head. No wonder Kalen keeps his distance even with the bond pulling us together. He's trying to protect me. And himself. The mate bond wasn't part of Sebastian's calculation, Vance said, a hint of hope in his voice. It's the moon goddess's counterbalance to his dark magic. The bond gives strength where the curse seeks to weaken. It creates connection where the curse demands isolation. Alara touched the crescent mark at her throat, feeling its steady pulse. Then why hasn't it been enough to save the others? Kalen has been bonded before, yet each mate still died. Because the bond was incomplete, came a deep voice from behind them. Alara turned to find Kalen standing at the entrance to their alcove, his expression solemn. He approached the table, studying the texts they had gathered. Each time I held back, he continued, his voice low with confession. I feared what complete bonding would mean for me. For them. I kept parts of myself separate, thinking, to shield them from the curse. His eyes met Alara's, filled with old pain. I was wrong. The bond needs to be complete to have any chance against Sebastian's magic. Complete how? Alara asked, though something instinctive within her already knew the answer. Kalen's gaze dropped to the pendant at her throat. The bond must be sealed in mind, spirit, and body. No barriers. No reservations. He looked back at the ancient texts. But even that might not be enough without the Blackwood knowledge that was lost. Vance Holloway cleared his throat. Perhaps not all was lost. He reached into his robe, extracting a small key that hung on a chain around his neck. I've waited for the right moment to share this. I believe that moment has come. He stood, moving to a section of shelving that appeared no different from the rest. With practiced fingers, he pressed a specific sequence of carved symbols, revealing a hidden compartment. The key fit perfectly into a lock embedded in the wood. When he turned it, the compartment slid open, revealing a single book bound in white leather, its cover unmarked. The last journal of Lena Stormheart, Vance said reverently. Your mother, Alara. I recovered it the night of the attack and have kept it hidden all these years, waiting for you to return. The white leather journal lay on the table between them. Its unblemished cover gleamed in the library's filtered light. Alara stared at it, her heart pounding against her ribs. Her mother's journal. The last words of a woman she had never known, preserved through decades of secrecy and patience. You kept this hidden all these years. Kalen's voice was dangerously quiet, his eyes fixed on Vance. Even from me. The old advisor stood tall despite the implied accusation. I swore an oath to Lena Stormheart as she lay dying, that her words would remain sealed until her daughter returned to claim them. His weathered hand rested protectively on the journal. Some promises transcend even loyalty to the Alpha, my king. Kalen's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. Then it seems the time has come to honor your oath. He gestured toward Alara. It belongs to her now. With reverent hands, Vance placed the journal before Alara. Your mother was a visionary among her people, the last true dreamwalker of the Blackwood line. Yet Vance Holloway watched as Alara Blackwood traced the unmarked cover, feeling a strange warmth emanate from the leather binding. How do I open it? She asked. There's no clasp. Vance smiled faintly. Blackwood blood is the key. One drop will unseal what was written for your eyes alone. Kalen Stormrider produced a small knife from his belt, offering it handle first to Alara. May I? He asked. She nodded, extending her palm. With gentle precision, Kalen made a small cut across her skin. Blood welled bright red against her pale flesh. Alara turned her hand, allowing a single drop to fall onto the journal's cover. The effect was immediate and astonishing. The white leather absorbed her blood like thirsty earth drinks rain. Where the droplet landed, silver lines began to spread outward, forming intricate patterns across the cover. A spiral within a crescent moon, surrounded by ancient symbols that pulsed with inner light. The Blackwood seal, Vance breathed, just as it appeared in your family's great hall. The journal's cover parted of its own accord, pages turning as if guided by invisible hands until they settled at the beginning of the text. Alara leaned forward, heart in her throat, as she read the first lines written in elegant flowing script. To my daughter, whom I shall never know in this life. If you are reading these words, then Vance has kept his promise, and you have survived to find your heritage. The blood that flows in your veins carries both blessing and burden. It marks you as the last of our line, and perhaps the salvation of those we once called enemies. Alara's voice faltered as emotion threatened to overwhelm her. Kalen moved closer, his presence steadying as she continued to read aloud. The curse that binds the Nightshade bloodline was born of love, twisted to hatred, power corrupted by jealousy. Sebastian's spirit has grown stronger, with each death feeding on the sacrifice of innocent souls. But what was begun in darkness can only be ended in light. 3 elements must align to break the curse: the eclipse that strengthens Sebastian's power, the complete bond between true mates, and the willing sacrifice of one who carries dual blood. The prophecy speaks of one marked twice by the mate bond, and the healer's gift who will stand at the threshold between shadow and light. Alara looked up, meeting Kalen's intense gaze. Dual blood, she whispered. What does that mean? Vance leaned forward, studying the text. Your mother was Blackwood by birth, but she married into another bloodline before the pack fell. It was unusual. Most Blackwood women became lunas to alphas of other packs, not common wolves. Alara returned to the journal, scanning ahead. Her breath caught as she found the answer written in her mother's hand. You carry not only Blackwood blood, my daughter, but Nightshade as well. Your father was Nathaniel Nightshade, younger brother to the Alpha. Our love was forbidden during the growing conflict between our packs. But the moon goddess blessed our union despite the elders' disapproval. In you, the bloodlines that have warred for generations are united once more. The revelation struck like lightning. Alara looked up at Kalen, who had gone utterly still. Nathaniel, he said, his voice barely audible. My uncle. He was reported killed in a border skirmish, months before the final assault on Blackwood territory. Alive, Vance said softly. He defected to the Blackwoods, married Elena Stormheart in secret. Your father, the old advisor, hesitated. Your father considered it the ultimate betrayal. So I'm both, Alara said, trying to absorb the implications. Blackwood and Nightshade, healer and warrior, the one marked twice. Kalen murmured, his eyes fixed on the crescent at her throat and the spiral birthmark beneath her collarbone. The prophecy spoke true. Alara continued reading her mother's words, urgency creeping into her voice. Sebastian's curse requires blood to maintain its power. The blood of mates bonded to the Alpha. But to break the curse requires blood freely given by one who carries both bloodlines. Not in death, but in willing sacrifice during the eclipse, when the veil between worlds is thinnest. The ritual is ancient, preserved in the oldest texts of our people. I have transcribed it here, though I pray you never need it. But if fate has bound you to a Nightshade Alpha, if the curse threatens to claim you, as it has claimed others, then these words may be your salvation and his. The pages that followed contained detailed instructions for a complex ritual to be performed during the lunar eclipse. Diagrams showed precise arrangements of crystals, herbs, and carved symbols. Incantations in the old language filled the margins. And at the center of it all, a circle where 2 wolves, Alpha and Luna, would stand as the moon's shadow passed across its face. This is it, Vance said, his voice filled with wonder. The knowledge we thought lost forever. Kalen studied the ritual instructions with intense focus. It requires the blood of both Alpha and Luna freely given. A symbolic death and rebirth. Kalen Stormrider looked up, meeting Alara Blackwood's gaze. Complete bonding before the ritual begins. he said, the implications hanging between them. Like a storm cloud. Complete bonding. Mind, spirit, body. United through the mate bond. The vulnerability it would require from both of them was staggering. Alara turned another page, finding a personal message addressed directly to her. My beloved daughter, if you have found your way to these words, then the burden of breaking the curse has fallen to you. Know that this was always your destiny, to heal the rift between our bloodlines, to end the cycle of vengeance that has claimed too many lives. The path ahead will demand courage beyond measure. Sebastian's spirit will fight to maintain his hold on the living world. He will use every weapon at his disposal, doubt, fear, and those susceptible to his influence among the living. Trust only those whose loyalty has been proven through sacrifice. Above all, remember that the bond between true mates is the moon goddess's greatest gift, a light capable of penetrating even the deepest darkness. Where the curse separates, the bond unites. Where the curse destroys, the bond creates. This is the balance that Sebastian sought to corrupt, and only by restoring this balance can his power be broken forever. I send these words to you across time, across the veil that separates mother from daughter. May the goddess guide your path and protect your heart. You are the last Silverstone, but also the first of something new, something better, with eternal love. Lena Stormheart. Silence filled the library alcove as Alara closed the journal. Her mother's final words echoed within her. Kaelin stood motionless, processing everything they had learned. Vance Holloway watched them both, his aged eyes reflecting a lifetime of waiting for this moment. The eclipse is in 3 days. Kaelin finally said, his voice steady despite the weight of revelation. The new moon comes tomorrow night. Sebastian's power will be growing stronger by the hour, and the blood claws will be coming for Alara. Vance added gravely. Their message was clear. Alara clutched the journal to her chest, feeling a connection to her mother that transcended death and time. Jackson Vale said there were truths I should know. Do you think he knows about my dual bloodline, about the ritual? Kaelin's expression darkened. If he does, it raises questions about how the blood claws came by such knowledge, and why they've chosen now to reveal it. We cannot trust them. Justin, Vance said firmly. Lena Stormheart's warning was specific: trust only those proven through sacrifice. Then we proceed with what we know, Kaelin decided. Alara continues her training. The ritual preparations begin today. He turned to the old advisor, Vance. You'll oversee the gathering of everything needed for the eclipse ceremony. The elderly wolf nodded solemnly. I'll need access to the old storage chambers. Some of these herbs and crystals haven't been used in generations. You'll have it, Kaelin responded. His attention returned to Alara, his gaze intense. As for the bonding requirement, attention filled the air between them, not unpleasant but charged with possibility and uncertainty. The mate bond pulsed at Alara's throat, responding to Kaelin's proximity. The unspoken acknowledgement of what must happen before the eclipse. We have 3 days, Alara said quietly. First, I need to master my abilities, to understand what it truly means to be Silverstone. She touched the journal reverently. My mother has given us the key. Now we need to be worthy of using it. Kaelin nodded, respect evident in his gaze. Then let's begin. Every moment counts from here forward. The remainder of the day passed in a blur of concentrated effort. Vance and Alara remained in the library, poring over Lena Stormheart's journal and cross-referencing its instructions with other ancient texts. Kaelin departed to make arrangements for the eclipse ritual, instructing the most trusted pack members to gather rare materials without revealing their purpose. As evening approached, Rafe Draven entered the library, his expression carefully neutral as he surveyed their work. The council requests your presence, my king, he announced to Kaelin, who had returned an hour earlier. The elders are concerned about the increased security and unusual preparations. Kaelin straightened from the table where he'd been studying Lena Stormheart's ritual diagrams. Tell them. I'll address their concerns tomorrow. Tonight, we have more pressing matters. Rafe's gaze drifted to the white leather journal, curiosity evident despite his attempt at indifference. New information has come to the light. Nothing that concerns the council at present. Kaelin replied, his tone making it clear the subject was closed. A muscle twitched in Rafe's jaw, but he nodded respectfully. As you wish, my king. He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Alara. The Bloodclaw messenger approaches our northern border under a flag of truce, Rafe Draven said. He claims to have information specifically for you. Alara Blackwood. Alara exchanged glances with Kaelin Stormrider. Jackson Vale, she said softly. Most likely, Rafe agreed. The Alpha has granted him safe passage to deliver his message, but no further. He awaits your decision on whether to receive him. The request hung in the air, fraught with implications. Meeting with Jackson Vale could provide valuable information, Or it could be a trap designed to separate Alara from Kalen's protection on the night when the curse's power was at its peak. I'll see him. Alara decided, her voice firmer than she felt, but not alone. Kalen nodded his agreement. Bring him to the Great Hall at nightfall, he ordered. He will speak his piece under my roof, under my watch. After Rafe had departed, Vance Holloway voiced the concern they all shared. This timing is too convenient. The Bloodclaw is sending an envoy on the new moon when Sebastian's influence is strongest. That's precisely why I want to hear what he has to say, Alara replied. If Jackson Vale knows about the ritual about my dual bloodline, we need to understand how and why. Kalen studied her with golden eyes that missed nothing. You trusted him once. I did. Before I knew who he was. Before I knew who I was. Alara touched the silverstone pendant at her throat. But my mother warned that Sebastian will use anyone susceptible to his influence. No one can be trusted without proof of loyalty. And yet we must risk trusting someone, Vance said quietly. The ritual requires at least one witness to stand outside the circle, someone to complete the incantations, while you both are undergoing the transformation. Kalen's brow furrowed. It can't be you. The old advisor shook his head regretfully. The witness must be in their prime, strong enough to withstand the backlash of power when Sebastian's spirit fights back. At my age, he gestured to his frail frame, I would not survive it. Brock Steele, a grizzled warrior who had served alongside Vance for decades, entered the library without announcement. His weathered face was set in grim lines, but his eyes held steady purpose. I've been listening outside, he admitted without apology, and I offer myself as witness. Vance turned to his old friend in surprise. Brock, you know the risks. Better than most, the old warrior replied. I've lived long enough to see 3 Lunas die 3 times, watched our Alpha lose pieces of himself. He straightened his back, standing taller despite his years. If my life buys an end to this curse, it's well spent. Kalen studied the veteran warrior appraisingly. Your loyalty has never been questioned, Brock, but this ritual requires more than courage. It demands specific knowledge of the old ways. Which I can teach him. Vance interjected. Brock may lack my years in the archives, but his memory has always been keen. What I know he can learn, in the time we have. Alara looked between the 2 elders, something warming inside her at the sight of these aged wolves standing ready to sacrifice for a future they might never see. This was wisdom her mother had spoken of, the foresight to plant trees whose shade you would never sit beneath. We accept your offer, she said before Kalen could speak, her voice filled with gratitude. Kalen nodded his agreement. Let's hear what the Bloodclaw messenger has to say. Then we'll decide who stands with us during the eclipse. As darkness fell across the Sierra Nevada mountains, the Shadow Moon fortress transformed. Torches blazed along the corridors, casting long shadows against stone walls. Guards in ceremonial armor stood at attention, their faces impassive but alert. The great hall, normally reserved for packed ceremonies and major council sessions, had been prepared for a diplomatic meeting of the highest importance. Kalen sat on his throne, dressed in formal Alpha attire, black with silver accents that caught the torchlight. Beside him stood Vance, the elder advisor's presence lending historical weight to the proceedings. Alara waited at Kalen's right hand, clothed in the deep blue and silver of a Luna in waiting. The silverstone pendant gleamed at her throat, its spiral pattern occasionally catching the light with an otherworldly glow. The massive doors at the end of the hall swung open. Rafe Draven entered first, followed by a tall, broad-shouldered man with auburn hair and amber eyes. Jackson Vale walked with the confidence of someone accustomed to power, his gaze sweeping the hall before settling on Alara. Recognition, relief, and something more complex passed across his features. Alara. He said her name, carrying years of memory. Jackson, she replied, keeping her voice neutral, though the sight of him stirred conflicting emotions within her. He had been kind to her, once had taught her how to survive in the wilderness, when her abilities first manifested, and humans had driven her out. But he had also hidden his true identity, his connection to the Bloodclaw pack, who had been at war with Shadow Moon for generations. Rafe Draven announced formally, Jackson Vale of the Bloodclaw Council, son of Alpha. James Vale comes under a flag of truce to deliver a message to Alara Blackwood. Kalen Stormrider's voice filled the hall. Speak your piece, Bloodclaw. You've been granted safe passage for this purpose alone. Jackson Vale bowed slightly, a gesture of respect if not submission. I thank you for your hospitality, Alpha Stormrider. His attention returned to Alara, his expression softening. When I heard of your capture, I feared the worst. The child you saved, my nephew, speaks of you as his guardian angel. I'm not a prisoner here, Ilara replied, the half-truth uncomfortable on her tongue. While her status had dramatically improved, she was still not free to leave the fortress. Perhaps not in name, Jackson said, doubt evident in his tone. He reached into his cloak, extracting a small object wrapped in silk. I've come to return something that belongs to you, something you left behind when we were separated 5 years ago. He approached slowly, unwrapping the silk to reveal a bracelet of braided leather and silver. Ilara recognized it immediately. She had worn it since childhood, one of the few possessions she'd had with her when Vance Holloway delivered her to the human settlement. She had assumed it lost forever when she and Jackson were separated during the border skirmish. You kept it all this time, she asked, surprised. I kept everything of yours, he replied simply, hoping I would find you again. Kalen watched the exchange with unreadable eyes, his posture betraying no emotion. But the bond between him and Ilara pulsed with sudden intensity, a flare of something that might have been jealousy or concern. Jackson Vale held out the bracelet. There's more you should know, Ilara. About your past. About who you truly are. Ilara accepted the bracelet cautiously, her fingers brushing against Jackson's. The moment they touched, a vision flashed through her mind, sharp, sudden, and disorienting. She saw Jackson standing in a darkened chamber, speaking with a shadowy figure whose features she couldn't discern. The words echoed distantly. Bring her to us before the eclipse. The ritual must not be completed. She pulled back, gasping, the vision fading as quickly as it had appeared. Kalen was instantly alert, moving to her side. What did you see? He asked quietly, his hand steadying her elbow. Ilara looked at Jackson, a new weariness in her eyes. Who sent you? Really? Confusion crossed his face. My father, the Alpha. He believes you're being manipulated by the Nightshades, used as a pawn in their power games. And what do you believe? Vance Holloway asked, stepping forward. Jackson hesitated, something conflicted passing behind his eyes. I believe Ilara deserves to know the whole truth about the night the Silverstone Pack was destroyed. About her parents. He looked directly at Kalen. About the role your father played in ensuring there would be no witnesses to his crimes. Kalen's expression hardened. Choose your next words carefully, Bloodclaw. You stand in my hall accusing my father of dishonorable acts. I speak only the truth. Jackson replied evenly, as verified by one who was there that night. He turned back to Ilara. We have a survivor of the massacre living among our pack, an elder who escaped the fires. She can tell you what really happened. Why the Silverstones were targeted. Why your mother was specifically hunted. Ilara's heart pounded. Another survivor. Someone who might have known her mother, her father. The temptation to learn more was nearly overwhelming. Who is this elder? Vance asked, his voice strained. I was there that night. I saw no other survivors. Iris Moonfall, Jackson replied once. A healer to the Silverstone Luna. Vance's face paled. Impossible. Iris died in the assault. I saw her fall. You saw what the chaos of battle allowed you to see, Jackson countered. Our hunters found her 3 days later, barely alive, wandering the mountain passes. She has lived under our protection ever since, waiting for the prophecy to fulfill itself. Vance's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. Kalen spoke, his voice filled with quiet suspicion. What does she claim happened that night? That your father attacked? Not to prevent a coup, as Shadow Moon history claims, but to stop a ritual designed to break Sebastian's curse once and for all. Jackson's gaze moved between Kalen and Ilara. The Silverstones had discovered the truth, that one with dual bloodlines could end the curse that has plagued both packs for generations. Your mother was preparing for your birth, gathering the necessary elements for the eclipse ritual. And my father learned of this. Kalen asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Not your father, Jackson replied. His most trusted advisor. The one who stood to gain the most if the curse continued. All eyes turned to Rafe Draven, who had remained silent throughout the exchange. His expression betrayed nothing but a subtle tension had entered his posture. A convenient accusation, Rafe Draven said coldly, his voice devoid of emotion. No proof beyond the word of a conveniently appeared survivor who has lived with the enemy for 25 years. The proof is standing before you. Caleb Vale gestured towards Ilara Blackwood, the daughter of Cyrus Nightfall and Lena Stormheart, the one marked twice, the curse breaker foretold in both our pack's prophecies. Kalen Stormrider's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering in his golden gaze. How do you know of her dual bloodline? That information was revealed to us only hours ago from a source sealed since the night of the attack. A flicker of hesitation crossed Caleb's face. Iris Moonfall has maintained Lena's journals all these years. The knowledge was preserved within our pack, waiting for the right moment. Lies, Vance Holloway declared firmly. Iris's journal was unique, written specifically for her daughter, sealed with blood magic that only Alara could open. No copy exists. His aged eyes held new suspicion. You're well informed, young Vale. Suspiciously so. Tension filled the great hall. Guards shifted subtly, hands moving closer to their weapons. Rafe's expression remained carefully neutral, but his eyes never left Caleb. Alara studied the Bloodclaw messenger, reaching out with her newly awakened Silverstone senses. There was truth in his words about her parents, about her dual bloodline. But beneath that truth lay something darker. An agenda he wasn't revealing, a purpose beyond simple rescue or reunion. You said in your note that you would come for me during the new moon tonight, Alara said carefully. Was that merely a message, or did you expect me to leave with you now? Caleb straightened, decision evident in his stance. The offer stands. Come with me to meet Iris. Learn the full truth of your heritage, away from those who have every reason to keep you ignorant of your true power. And if I decline? Alara asked, her voice steady. Something hardened in Caleb's amber eyes. Then you condemn yourself to the same fate as those who came before you. The curse will claim you during the eclipse, just as it has claimed every Luna bonded to a Nightshade Alpha. Not this time, Alara said with quiet conviction. We found the ritual. My mother's journal has shown us the way to break Sebastian's curse once and for all. Surprise and alarm flashed across Caleb's face before he could mask it. You can't possibly understand what you're dealing with. Sebastian's power has grown too strong. The ritual is dangerous. It could kill you both. A risk we're prepared to take, Alara said firmly. Kalen interjected, rising from his throne to stand beside Alara. The united front they presented was not lost on anyone present. Caleb's gaze moved between them, calculation evident. At least allow Iris to assist with the ritual. Her knowledge of Silverstone magic would be invaluable if she were truly Iris Moonfall. Vance Holloway interrupted, his voice sharp. But the woman you claim as your elder cannot be who you say. The real Iris would know that Lena's journal was unique, unsealed only by her daughter's blood. A tense silence followed, broken by Rafe's measured voice. It seems the Bloodclaw messenger's true purpose becomes clear. Not to rescue, but to prevent. Not to reveal truth, but to create division. Kalen stepped forward, his authority filling the hall. You have delivered your message, Caleb Vale. Now I deliver mine, Alara. Blackwood remains under my protection as mate bond and Luna to be. The ritual to break Sebastian's curse will proceed during the eclipse. You may return to your Alpha with this information. Caleb's expression darkened. You're making a grave mistake, both of you. His eyes lingered on Alara, a mixture of regret and determination evident. The bond you feel, it's an illusion. A trap designed by Sebastian himself to ensure his next victim comes willingly to the sacrifice. Enough, Kalen commanded. Your safe passage ends at dawn. I suggest you use it wisely. For a moment it seemed Caleb might argue further. Instead he bowed stiffly. When the curse claims her, remember that we offered sanctuary. With a final look at Alara, he turned and departed, escorted by guards who would see him safely to the border. After the great hall had emptied of all but the core group, Lara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He was lying. Not about everything, Vance Holloway agreed grimly, but about crucial details. Yes, Kalen said thoughtfully. The question is why? What purpose does it serve the Bloodclaws to prevent the breaking of a curse that has plagued both our packs for generations? Power, he said simply. If Sebastian's curse continues, if it claims another Luna during the eclipse, you would lose yourself to the beast. Become the monster Sebastian intended, incapable of leadership or reason. Vance finished softly. The Bloodclaws could seize territory, while Shadow Moon falls into chaos. Alara Blackwood twisted the bracelet Caleb had returned between her fingers, an unsettling feeling gnawing at her awareness. There's more to this than just territorial advantage, she murmured. When I touched Caleb, I saw. She hesitated, trying to piece together the fragmented vision. Someone else is involved, she continued. Someone in the shadows pulling Caleb's strings. Kalen Stormrider stopped pacing, his golden eyes narrowing in focus. Sebastian's influence goes beyond just the curse, he said, his voice low. He manipulates the living, especially those vulnerable to darkness. Or those who crave power, Vance Holloway added grimly. My king, we must proceed with caution, Vance warned. The new moon has risen. Sebastian's strength will only grow stronger as the hours pass until the eclipse. Kalen nodded, a decision made. Double the guards tonight. No one enters or leaves the fortress without my direct approval. His gaze softened slightly as he turned to Alara. You should rest, he said, his voice gentler. Tomorrow will test us both. As Vance escorted her back to her chambers, Alara felt the weight of prophecy and expectation press down on her. The bracelet that Caleb had returned seemed to burn against her skin, a symbol of a past she barely remembered, and a future hanging in the balance. At her door, Vance paused, concern etched across his weathered face. Trust your instincts tonight, child, he advised. The new moon is when we are most vulnerable to deception, when the goddess's light is hidden and the shadows grow long. Alara nodded, clutching Elena's journal tightly to her chest. I'll read more of my mother's words, she said softly. Perhaps they'll give me guidance before the eclipse. Once alone in her room, Alara closed the door behind her, the warmth of the fire casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. She moved to the window, gazing out at the night sky. There was no moon, only the vastness of endless stars, scattered across the velvet blackness. The new moon, she whispered to herself. A time for beginnings and endings, for vulnerability and potential. She opened Elena's journal again, desperate for guidance. As she turned the pages, something strange began to happen. The words in the margins started to shift, appearing as if written by an invisible hand. Her mother's voice seemed to rise from the page. Sebastian will seek a vessel among the living, someone who serves him, knowingly or not. Look for the one who gains the most from keeping the curse alive. Alara's mind immediately raced to Rafe Draven the Beta. He has everything to gain if Alexander loses himself to the curse, she murmured. The power vacuum would be his chance to rise. But something about that thought didn't sit right, too obvious, too convenient. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Kalen stood in the doorway, his powerful form framed by the torchlight from the corridor. I needed to be certain you were safe, he said simply. Alara stepped aside, and the moment he crossed the threshold, the bond between them hummed with renewed intensity. Neither of them spoke for a long while, their silence thick with unspoken words. William has begun the preparations, Kalen finally said, breaking the stillness. The ritual chamber beneath the fortress has been sealed and warded. Only those directly involved will have access. Alara nodded, still clutching the journal. My mother left additional warnings, she said, her voice quiet. She believed Sebastian might be working through someone in the pack. Victor, Kalen said, not as a question but as a grim confirmation. Perhaps. Alara hesitated. But it feels too obvious. My mother wrote that Sebastian would seek a vessel among the living, she continued. Someone who stands to gain from the curse continuing. Kalen moved to the window, staring out at the starlit mountains. Victor has been with me through all 3 previous bonds, he said softly. He held me during those dark days after each death. If he serves Sebastian, why would he offer comfort rather than pushing me further toward darkness? A chill ran through Alara. Perhaps to maintain your trust. To ensure you'd never suspect him when the time came. Kalen turned back to her, the conflict clear on his face. He's been my shadow since childhood, my closest friend when others feared to approach the Alpha's sun. Which gives him the perfect position to influence you, Alara pointed out gently, and to sabotage any attempt to break the curse. The weight of potential betrayal settled over Kalen like a heavy cloak. If you're right, he said, his voice quiet, we can trust almost no one. His eyes found hers intense with questioning. Can I trust you, Alara Blackwood? With my pack's future, with my own soul, Alara. Blackwood met Kalen's Stormrider's gaze without flinching. I have just as much to lose as you do, maybe even more. This isn't just about breaking a curse anymore. It's about reclaiming my heritage, understanding who I really am. She stepped closer, the bond between them thrumming stronger with every inch. I want to live, Kalen, not just survive. Something shifted in his expression, a subtle softening, a surrender to the force that had been growing between them since that first moment in the courtyard. He reached out slowly, deliberately, placing his fingers against the crescent mark at her throat. The contact sent a wave of warmth through both of them, the bond flaring bright, undeniable. Then we do this together, he said, his voice steady, resolute. No more holding back, no more fear of what the complete bonding might bring. Alara's heart raced at his words, at the weight of their implication. The ritual required full unity, mind, body, and spirit, joined without reservation. She had understood this intellectually since reading Elena's journal, but now facing it with Kalen's standing before her, the abstract idea became intensely personal. Together, she echoed, her hand rising to cover his, where it rested against her mark. The next morning dawned clear and cold, the sky stretched wide and pristine over the mountain peaks. Alara woke feeling more rested than she had in years, a new certainty in her movements as she prepared for the day ahead. Kaelin had left before dawn, both of them acknowledging that the complete bonding would wait until evening, a sacred act that demanded careful preparation. Vance Holloway met her in the library, arms laden, with rare herbs and crystals collected throughout the night. He looked exhausted, but determined to purpose, giving strength to his frail frame. "We have much to do before nightfall," he said, gesturing toward the materials spread across the table. "The ritual preparation requires absolute precision. For hours they worked side by side, grinding herbs to exact proportions, charging crystals under the right angles of sunlight, and transcribing incantations from Elena's journal onto ritual scrolls." Vance's knowledge was vast, but he shared it, patiently explaining each step with the care of a teacher, who knew that soon his lessons would be all that remained of him. "You've spent your whole life preserving this knowledge," Alara observed as they finished another complex mixture, waiting for this moment. Vance paused, his hands stilling, his eyes distant with memory. "Not just knowledge, child," he said quietly. "Hope. When the Silverstones fell, something precious was lost, not just lives, but a way of seeing the world. Balance. Harmony between power and wisdom." He looked at her with an intensity she hadn't expected. "Your mother understood this. She knew that strength without compassion becomes tyranny, and healing without strength becomes victimhood. And you've carried this understanding all these years," Alara said softly, "when it would have been easier to forget." Vance smiled faintly. "The easy path rarely leads where we need to go. I wasn't always this wise," he added after a moment. "In my youth I was as hungry for glory as any warrior. It took decades to realize that true legacy isn't measured in battles won or enemies vanquished, but in what endures after we're gone." His words settled in Alara's heart, resonating with something she'd always felt, but never fully understood. Vance had preserved more than just facts and rituals. He had kept alive a philosophy, a way of being, that might otherwise have vanished. As the sun began to set, Derek Stone entered the library, his weathered face solemn as Vance instructed him in the ritual witness's role. The old warrior absorbed the complex incantations with surprising speed, his memory as formidable as Vance had claimed. "The witness stands between worlds," Vance explained. "Not fully in the ritual, nor entirely outside it. You will feel Sebastian's resistance, his attempt to maintain the curse. You must hold firm, no matter what visions or pain he sends." Derek nodded gravely. "I've faced death before. I do not fear it now." "Fear is not the enemy," Vance countered. "Doubt is. When the moment comes, you must believe in the ritual's power more than you believe in Sebastian's." Kaelin arrived as twilight deepened, shadows stretching across the fortress grounds. His expression was calm, but resolute, the authority of the Alpha apparent in every movement. He had spent the day securing the fortress, personally inspecting each guard post and entrance. Victor Draven had been conspicuously absent, claiming border patrol duties that would keep him away until morning. "Everything is prepared in the ritual chamber," Kaelin announced. "We should proceed before full darkness." The small group made their way through the fortress, following ancient stone steps that spiraled deep beneath the mountain. Few knew of this underground chamber built by the first Nightshade Alpha as a place to commune with the moon goddess when her face was hidden from the world above. The chamber itself was circular, its walls carved directly from the heart of the mountain. Crystals embedded in the stone glowed with soft blue light, illuminating the space without flame. In the center, the ritual circle had been inscribed exactly as Elena's journal described. Concentric rings of silver and obsidian were etched with symbols older than any written language. Alara could feel the hum of power in the air, ancient, patient, and waiting. This place had stood untouched for centuries, waiting for this very moment. Waiting for her. Vance moved with deliberate precision around the circle, placing carefully charged crystals at specific points, and pouring mixtures of herbs and oils along the defined lines. Derek Stone took his place at the northern point, ceremonial staff in hand, his lips quietly rehearsing the incantations Vance had taught him. "When the eclipse reaches totality," Vance instructed, his voice low but firm, "you must both be in wolf form outside the center of the circle. Your blood will be mingled on the altar stone here." He pointed to a small white pedestal at the exact center of the circle. "The witness will recite the binding words as Sebastian's spirit manifests." And then, Kaelin Stormrider asked, his voice tinged with the weight of the moment. Vance's expression grew solemn. "Then you face him together, united through the bond. Alara's dual bloodline provides the key, the bridge between what was torn apart long ago." Vance stepped back, surveying the ritual setup one final time. Satisfied, he turned to Alara and Kaelin with an unexpected intensity in his aged eyes. "I have waited a lifetime for this moment," he said quietly, to see the cycle of vengeance, broken to witness healing, where there's only been harm. His voice grew stronger with each word. Whatever happens tonight, know this. You have already succeeded in one thing. You've chosen unity over division, love over fear. That alone makes these years of waiting worthwhile. Alara felt her throat tighten as tears threatened. Impulsively, she reached out and embraced him, the man who had saved her as a child, who had preserved her heritage when it seemed everything else was lost. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Vance seemed startled for a moment, but returned the hug with surprising strength. "It has been my honor, child." He pulled back slightly, his hands steady on her shoulders. "Now prepare yourselves. The eclipse begins in 1 hour." As Vance and Derek withdrew to the edges of the chamber to finish the final preparations, Kalen took Alara's hands in his. The mate bond pulsed between them, stronger than ever, but still incomplete, a force that wrapped around them both. "Are you ready?" he asked, his golden eyes searching hers. Alara nodded, feeling the shift within herself. The fear was gone, replaced by certainty. "I've been preparing for this my whole life," she said, her voice steady, "even when I didn't know it."